Well, good morning, and we're back. So I've had a 2-week half-term holiday, and I figured I wouldn't be writing any content or creating any videos. I give myself a break. But we're back, first day back at school, and I've just had my lower sixth German, so 16, 17 years old. They finished their German GCSEs last year. They decided they want to continue German, which was great for A-level. And one of my jobs for this class has been to create a Berlin topic. And one of the things that I wanted to try out this year was mixing history and language. I wanted to create a fun, quite interesting exploration of Berlin's history from start to finish. I was and am really dissatisfied with the Berlin content in the textbook, the AQA textbook. It's extremely selective. It comes from a particular worldview that wants to emphasize certain things and other things are just not mentioned. And that's something I've noticed in textbooks is there actually is curation, either by including and overemphasizing certain things, which may or may not be deliberate. If you've only got 6 pages, some things are going to get left out, and by including one thing, it's immediately a sixth of that topic or that subtopic. There's no finger pointing from me. It's more just to say that it was a very disappointing and unsatisfactory topic for me as someone who loves the city of Berlin. And I love it for various reasons. I love it for its modern character, but I also love it for the role that it's played in history. It's got a fascinating story, as does every city. And I felt like that was something that I missed in my A-level. We studied Berlin and we didn't really learn about anything pre-20th and 21st century. And the emphasis was very heavily upon certain events, which are important. But I want to give a more comprehensive view. And I wanted to take a tour through history from the start of the city to where we are today. And it fits fairly well into the curriculum, the scheme of work. And it's been a really enjoyable sort of CPD activity, taking my love of history and story and narrative and exploring why we are where we are today and trying to match that with my love of languages, especially the German language. And so you're looking at lesson 2 here. I think I'll be creating some more content series in the future, basically going through what I did wrong and what I feel I've done right, the mistakes I've made, the errors I've learned from. Because the first fundamental problem that I came across, which one of my heads of department helped me recognize and help me fix, was that I had big blocks of text. And that's the problem, really. First problem that I've encountered with trying to mix history and language is there's loads and loads of content. And so here I am at the start of the video basically saying they've curated it in a way that I disapprove of or wasn't very enjoyable for me. And here I am 2-3 minutes later basically saying I've had to curate the content. I feel that the curation that I've done is to simplify events. Rather than having a paragraph describing an event, I've included a sentence or a few words. I've tried to step back from, letting any personal feelings and opinions cloud the presentation. But for instance, we've got the persecution of Jews, we've got the Reformation, we've got the printing press, we've got the arrival of the Huguenots. These were massive events in the history of Berlin, and they're just not mentioned in the textbook. And maybe that's with good reason. Maybe we want to focus on other events. But as a history lover myself, and knowing the class that I've got, and they also like history, it's been a very, very positive reception to trying to go through the different phases of Berlin's history. So with that intro and that background, we have here a slide that's fairly bare bones. I like to focus on the content, really. I want to put my effort and my time into things that I feel are helpful for my students. I don't always feel that flashy PowerPoint designs is worth my time. What I thought was more important was making sure that the activity in question, at least for this year, maybe next year I can go and do a bit more decoration and tidy things up visually, but provided it's simple and it does its job, but it works and it's enjoyable, that for me was the main goal for this year. And so these are kind of intro texts to this lesson. I mean, if you follow me down, there's a lot there. This isn't really a lesson. You know, we've definitely cherry picked certain activities. There's a ton of videos here. I quite like this guy. He's a German history channel. And that was there really to basically just lay out a banquet for my students to say, look, if you're interested in this, here's an extra resource. So this introductory exercise is really simple. It's a text scan, but it's a skill that I feel that my sixth formers need to learn in terms of having little habits and tools in the toolkit, you know, the linguist's toolkit, to look at a text and not be overwhelmed by it, particularly if you're faced with what looks like a lot of gobbledygook, new language, unfamiliar. So rather than translating this text, what I decided to do is present this text and say, okay, let's scan it and let's get the gist. You know, let's find the 8 words that are critical to meaning. So one might be, well, I was quite loose, we could have phrases. So Juden beschuldigt, entweiht, verbrannt, konvertiert, ausgewiesen, Geburt. You know, all of these words are kind of by themselves perhaps not fully explanatory, but they help you understand, okay, I'm seeing the scarlet thread, so to speak, of what's going on in this text. And there's a story behind this as well. And maybe that story can be done in English. Maybe I can tell that in the target language, which I did with this class. And you start to get this really rich tapestry of, in this particular case, you know, the end of the late medieval era for Berlin. We go next to another one. So that was a nice starter activity, that's scanning. This also works as a nice starter activity. It's on the board, very simple. Find the German words. And I appreciate, guys, that you'll know this. You know, I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel here. The reason why I want to make this video is because this was actually quite revelatory. You know, it's revelatory for me. You know, I create these videos not always to be like, this is the best way, but more as a kind of ongoing CPD teacher diary for myself. And for me, these were really, really helpful in taking history resources from German and trying to turn them into helpful language activities. Because simply having a block of text, kids just switch off and it's boring. I was bored creating it, and I was there really annoyed after a day really of creating resources. And thankfully my head of department just in 5 minutes was able to give me some real gems to turn text into language learning resources. So this one, find the German words. Okay, so it's very simple. You know, as I say, we're not reinventing the wheel. We're not trying to, sometimes we don't have to be super innovative. Sometimes we can have simple activities. And if we don't overlook them and we include them, it's actually really helpful for the students. And it provides what we're after, which at the end of the day is learning. And this one added a little bit of a kind of extension puzzle question. Kurfürstendamm's, is a pretty big tourist attraction. What was it? Why is it there? Why was it built? And again, we start to develop this rich background to the city that we're exploring as part of this topic. So those are the two sort of activities that I started off this lesson with. And the first one, scan the text, find words that are critical to meaning. Train your mind to notice those things that perhaps intimidate you or you recognize are pretty important to a sentence, and then maybe take the time to go through, figure out what the text is saying, and then recheck those critical words. Yeah, that sentence hinges on this word or this verb. And then the second one here, really simple. I've got a text here that I lifted from Wikipedia, which is actually, in this particular case, a really solid, source of good text about the history of Berlin. Just included it, shortened it ever so slightly, just to make sure that it was, an appropriate size for a slide. I mean, if I just look at this now, is it going to give me a word count? Click on review. No, it's not giving me a word count. But you can see there that this isn't a massive text. It's more like a longer paragraph. And that's also been the other challenge for me with taking these history texts. There is too much. The skill that I'm having to learn, is really being an editor and a curator and trying to be faithful to what the text is telling, not leaving stuff out, but also making sure that it just doesn't run on and run on and run on. And there is this balancing act between content and, creating a usable resource, really, because at the end of the day, 250 words telling me about Joachim II, just not helpful. It's not helpful for my bigger goals. And so I suppose that's the final thing I touch on is know your goals, keep the main thing. And in this case, I want to talk about history. I want to have basically a history module, but one that is also informing my students. They're able to step through the history of Berlin whilst also learning German and improving as linguists. And that's an ongoing process. I hope that's been of some use to you. That's been a massive step of progress for me. And I just wanted to share that with you. So thank you. I hope that helps. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.